Big Cat, I assume two things about you today. One, you are sleep deprived, and two, you are very happy because, as we established on the 2-minute stub on the TV side on the way in, the Bears are back.
The Bears are back, and I am very sleep deprived. That was a game that I'm still buzzing off of. It was one of those games that you get home. I got home around 1:30 in the morning, and I said I need to read everything that I can read about the game, about the post-game press conference, just kind of bask in the glow. So working at about 3 hours of sleep, but the Bears are back, and that's all that matters. And Mike, they played a legitimately great football game last night. I know people are going to say the Cowboys stink. They said the Lions stink, and that may be true. But as you know very well, you've been covering this league for a very long time. It's hard to win, and it's hard to put together a complete football game like the Bears did last night. And Mitch Trubisky, should we say it, Mike? I have a stat for you. Do you want me to go with the stat right off the bat, or do you want me to wait?
Lay it on me. Lay it on me. Lay it on me.
By the way, this comes from the Twitter account Stats by Stats. I can't believe Stats didn't get this Twitter account. But last night, Mitch Trubisky completed 70+% of his passes on 30+ attempts. He threw 3 touchdown passes. He rushed for 50+ yards, and he had a rushing touchdown. All in the same game. The first quarterback to ever do that in the NFL, Mike.
Well, I'd like to know how that one was verified, but it sounds good, so let's go with it. I have a question for you about your process, about your post-game enjoyment of the big win. Do you only focus on the comments and the reports and the columns that focus on the Bears, or do you allow yourself to enjoy the misery of the team they vanquished and see what guys like Jerry Jones and Jason Garrett had to say?
It completely depends. Last night, the Cowboys were absolutely irrelevant to me. I did not care. I feel like we're doing the same exact thing every single week with the Cowboys, where they lose a disappointing game, and then Jerry Jones stands in a hallway and subtly implies that Jason Garrett might not be the coach next year, then kind of walks it back on Tuesday when he does his radio hit. So the Cowboys were irrelevant to me. In terms of overall, though, as a fan, if it's a rivalry game, if it's a team I hate, I will be watching all of the losing team's press conferences. Actually, a good point to throw out there. The Badgers, Wisconsin Badgers, where I went to school, they played the Minnesota Golden Gophers last Saturday. I watched 15 minutes of a Facebook Live of PJ Fleck talking about how they won the division. So, yes, I do bask in the losers when it's a rivalry, when it's a game I really feel like passionate about. This one, I can get to the Cowboys later.
What do you think has gone right for the Bears in recent weeks? One of the big criticisms of Chicago earlier this year, they didn't have a true offensive identity. That's something Sims was all over from week 1 when we saw them sluggishly lose to the Green Bay Packers. What do you think clicked, and how do they keep that going?
So, more than anything, I think it's just confidence in Mitch Trubisky. And that Lions game, that last drive, that winning drive, and everyone will say it's the Lions, and yes, the Lions are very, very bad. But that drive at the end of the game to go 80+ yards, to make throws deep, to get that touchdown when they're down a field goal, and you might say, oh, they're going to settle for a field goal, try to win in the overtime. That drive right there, I think something clicked with Mitch Trubisky. And when he has confidence, when he has his teammates rallying around him, watching that game last night, the body language of his teammates, the exuberance on the sidelines was such a stark difference in the beginning of this year. And when he has that confidence and he's making quick decisions, and more than anything, Mike, you saw it last night. He had, I think it was a play in the first quarter where he clearly had a first down run and he was still trying to pass. And then finally he's like, you know what, I'm just going to run for this. When he can use his feet, he's a different guy because it alleviates a lot of the pressure when it comes to making decisions, when getting to the third read on offense. He can say, you know what, I'm going to tuck it and run. He has that athleticism. So it's Mitch's confidence is number one. And the Bears all season long, if you've watched this team closely, you know that complementary football has been a big problem because the defense at times, while still a very, very good defense, has had moments where it looks like they don't really want to be out there because they know their offense can't help them. The Philadelphia Eagles game is a perfect example where the Bears had 9 total yards in the first half on offense, and the defense looked like, hey, we don't want to be doing this. Why are we doing this if we can't even get a single yard throwing the ball? Then second half, they come out, and the offense clicks a little, and the defense steps up. And I think you saw that last night. I think when you see Mitch Trubisky coming back from that first interception and being able to move the ball still, the defense ramps up with the offense. And Matt Nagy, play calling, he deserves credit. He's running the ball very well. They have a complete game set. And lastly, Mike, the tight end position. The tight end position has been a big bugaboo for Ryan Pace. Trey Burton has been pretty much a zero when it comes to free agent signings. And that happens. You know, you can't really do anything. He's drafted a couple guys that haven't really panned out. And last night, you see guys who are unheralded guys step up in the tight end position, and the offense looks a lot different when Mitch has a guy he can throw to in the tight end position. So I'll put that all together, and I'm obviously a little tongue-in-cheek when I say Bears are back because I know it's an uphill battle. I know they have to win out and need help. But this is positive things for the Chicago Bears in a season that looked completely lost a month ago.
And they have to win out against the Packers, the Chiefs, and the Vikings. And, you know, every year there's a team that is hovering around 500, right around Thanksgiving, that finds the gas pedal, that floors it, that has that path that eventually emerges and they get to the playoffs. And they're very dangerous when they get there because they've already been playing playoff games each and every week leading up to the wild card round. So I think actually if the Bears find a way into this, they'll be better suited to win in January than they were last year when you go into it with everything to lose. Now you got nothing to lose if you make it because you weren't supposed to be there in the first place. And let me go back to your point about the confidence that Trubisky earned for himself and through his teammates with the drive at the end of the game against the Lions, because when he throws that interception on the first drive of the night for the Bears after the defense gave up a 17-play, 75-yard touchdown drive, you know, if they don't have confidence in Trubisky, it's not a quick 3 and out and you get a short field and then you're able to get the touchdown and tie the game up 7-7. And that's the kind of thing that could turn the game haywire. You know, if the Bears defense allows the Cowboys to embark on another long drive there and it's 10-0 or 14-0, it's an entirely different game. So how the defense responded when Mitchell Trubisky threw an interception to end the first drive, I think that had a lot to do with laying the foundation for the victory. And one of the reasons they stepped up very well may have been that they believe more in Mitch now than they did 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And Mike, you can tell me because you've been covering football for a lot longer than I have, but can you remember a player that has been more maligned publicly than Mitch Trubisky? And I'll put my hand up because I've said many times that I've had a serious doubts and I've had serious anger when it comes to how the season has gone and how this franchise seems to not be able to put together consecutive quality seasons just ever. But can you remember a guy who gets the type of like ridicule that Mitch Trubisky has? So I think he becomes somewhat of a sympathetic figure in that locker room, and guys really want to root for him. And I said this after the Lions game. I'll say it again today. I'm genuinely happy for Mitch Trubisky. Whether the Bears make the playoffs or not, these moments, I'm genuinely happy for him because most guys would not be able to come back from how bad it's looked at times and also how much they have been kind of dragged, and rightfully so sometimes, by the media, by Twitter, whatever it may be. Mitch Trubisky has been in a very bad spot when it comes to where he was drafted and the guys that were drafted behind him.
I mean, that's it. It's a perfect storm of factors that have conspired against the Bears and Mitch Trubisky, where the criticism comes from inside, from outside, from fans of the team, to fans of the rivals in the division and fans of any team. It just becomes kind of a laughingstock situation, and Trubisky had to find himself in the middle of it. And I think part of it, too, was Matt Nagy wasn't handling him the right way. You know, those moments that we saw earlier this year where Nagy seemed exasperated with him and yelling at him and you know, just it seems like it was 10 years ago, the mysterious hip injury against the Rams. I feel like Nagy figured out how to properly deal with Mitch Trubisky, to push his buttons the right way, to allow that confidence to come out again. Because I think the head coach had a lot to do with why Trubisky was afraid of his own shadow.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That moment, the phantom hip injury out in L.A., does seem like it was a pivotal moment in this season for the Bears because they've gone on to win the next 3 games. Now, again, not great opponents, but you play what your schedule says it is. You know, you can't really change that. But you're right. Matt Nagy has had moments where he has looked like the job has been too big for him. And the way he's dealt with the press, he looks like the job is too big for him. Something has happened. Something has changed. He's been preaching silver linings. That's what he's been saying in all his press conferences. He's been saying it to the team. We have a silver lining somewhere. We don't know when it's going to come through, but there will be a silver lining to this season. And right now, he looks like keeping his team together. He needs to be commended for it, and I'm here to do it because I'll tell you when I think you're doing a bad job, and I'll tell you when I think you're doing a great job. And right now, Matt Nagy's doing a great job, and there have been times this season where he's been doing, he's had a horrific job.
And here's the positive: even if the Bears don't make it to the playoffs, it creates what we've seen over the past few weeks, a plausible sense of hope for 2020. Whereas 5-6 weeks ago, where is the hope? Where is the reason to think that anything is going to be remotely productive and competitive in 2020? And I think that's a big part of it too.
Absolutely, Mike, because knowing how the NFL is structured, knowing how the first-round pick contracts are structured, the Bears were going to be in a tight spot because you have to decide before May about Mitch Trubisky's 5th-year option. And I don't think there's really no scenario, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, where you can spend that draft capital on a quarterback and not at least try to give them that 5th year. So they were going to pick it up no matter what. Like whether Mitch played well down the stretch, I think they were going to pick it up. Hope he played well in his 4th year, and then you have him for your 5th year, and it's guaranteed against injury. But the Bears didn't have a lot of moves coming up this offseason. They don't have a first-round draft pick. They have 2 seconds and no 3rd. So, there's a lot of guys that are getting a lot of money in the cap situation and Mitch Trubisky. So this was one of those spots where the Bears were not going to have a lot of wiggle room when it comes to drastically changing this team before next year. So having this positive momentum and having these wins is so huge if you want to win in 2020, knowing there won't be a lot of changes on the roster and there won't be a lot of changes when it comes to the coaching staff.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.